Blame. One of the worst emotions you can have in a workplace, and one of the things that leaders have got to do is to try and stop a blame culture. It's their fault. It wasn't down to my team, it was down to the mistakes that team made. It was down to the problems over here. That person did it wrong. The blame culture can destroy businesses, and getting rid of the blame culture can create thriving businesses. So in this episode, Albert and I talk about the problems of a blame culture and how to get rid of a blame culture. Really important for any leader to understand where they've got a blame culture, if they've got a blame culture, how to fix a blame culture. So we hope you enjoy this episode and look forward to seeing your feedback. Have a great week. And we're live. Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Leadership Detectives, where we're trying to uncover clues of great leadership. And I'm delighted to be joined, like I am every time on our 34th episode, by my good friend Albert Joseph. How you doing, mate?
I'm really good. You're right. Episode 34. Fantastic. Really good, actually. How's your week been? How's it been? What have you been up to?
It's been all right. Yeah, no, I've had a busy week. I've obviously here in this room, like everybody, but I haven't had any courses to teach this week. I've been doing some coaching, and I've had some kind of new projects I've been doing online, which has been really interesting. So learning new stuff, which has been good fun. How about you?
Yeah, likewise, actually. I've got work going on at home, as you know. So from a personal side, that's going on, which is really good. But on the business side, busy with the client I'm working with, but also potentially some new stuff coming up. So it's been a busy week, actually. There's a lot going on. Where are we now? We're still in January, right?
Just, yeah.
Man, I mean, it's kicked off and it's just been going crazy. I remember when we did the one we recorded at the end of 2020, and you said, should we feel guilty about the fact that we've actually probably had a good year?
Yeah.
But it's just come into this year and kept going, right? So hope that's the same for our listeners out there, right? I hope you guys are having a good year. I hope it's kicked off well for you. But can we add value for you now? Let's see.
And I wanted to have a chat with you today as well, mate, because I've been a bit worried about our podcast, listening's going down a bit. And you own podcasts, and I want to know what you're doing about it.
Yeah, it isn't all my fault, right? Because you didn't tell me that I owned podcasts. I knew I was running with podcasts, but I didn't know I owned it.
Oh, so it's my fault.
But maybe it's not your fault. It's just about a lack of clarity about what you needed me to do.
Oh, okay. All right. Which leads us on. Go on.
I know. I'm a bit demotivated now, actually.
Yeah. So you're feeling more committed now to doing a better job with the podcast?
Probably not. No.
And so we wanted to talk today about the damage a blame culture can do, and how leaders have a responsibility for trying to avoid a blame culture and create the opposite, create a non-blame culture, and how it can empower your business.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we wanted to talk about, because we see it everywhere. And I listened to something this morning which was interesting, and they asked a big group of leaders, and they said, how many things that go wrong are someone else's responsibility? Mm-hmm. And 70% of them said, yes, 70% of those problems were someone else's responsibility.
Wow.
When they actually drilled into those specific issues that had happened, it was like 2 to 5% were someone else's responsibilities. The other ones were avoidable with better leadership and with enabling the people to succeed.
Wow.
So it's a real problem. I mean, what's your experience of blame culture?
I don't know. Look, if we look at the world we came from and the jobs that we did, the major company you and I worked in, it was really, really prevalent, right? It wasn't about the issue as much, which was crazy. It was much more about who are we going to hold accountable for what happened. I have no problem with the word accountability, by the way, because that tells me what I own and what I'm responsible for. But if accountability word is turned into, I'm going to blame you for it because you didn't get it right, I don't get that. So my experience of it is it can be very damaging, but if we can turn it on its head and actually understand not blame, but accountability, how can we use that more positively? But unfortunately, if you use the word blame is just negative, isn't it?
It is, and it's everywhere, right? In human beings, one of our natural reactions, because of our reptilian brain, is fight or flight. So emotionally, when we're put in a threatening position, we fight. And one of the ways we fight is through blame.
Yeah.
We go, hang on, that wasn't me, that was someone else.
Deflect it, right? Let's
deflect it, or don't take it on board. And it's very natural to do that. And I'm guilty of doing it in a work environment, in a home environment. Actually, to be fair, at home, I've blamed other people for things that were probably my fault.
She's probably not watching this, Neil.
No, let's hope not. And but one of the most embarrassing, I'll tell you a story. So one of the most embarrassing, and this is one of the things about blame, right? When you blame someone and you know it's your fault, it's actually but one of the most embarrassing things happened when I was in the military and I was in the bomb disposal unit, and we were doing an exercise clearing a building of IEDs, of improvised explosive devices. And I was the commander in charge. The team went in to make the safe, and because I was the bomb disposal expert, I had to go in and make the devices safe, and I did most of them. And there was one I thought I'd made safe, but I hadn't disconnected the battery, which was a key part. Anyway, I then got picked up by the people who were observing this exercise and said, look, you failed to do this, you would have blown your whole team up. And I went, no, that's not fair. That's not a great example of how to do this. You're being unfair on me. We should have done this. We should have that. And actually, the scenario wasn't the right scenario, because that would have never really happened. And I just started laying out all these blames because I'd just blown up my team. And I just felt, I still remember it now. That's how embarrassed I was about it.
But that's a really good example, right? What good came from you worrying about blaming the fact that you've blown up your mate? What good came from that?
It was purely to deflect the situation and for me to fight back, because I thought I was being attacked. And I think that's what happens in business, in corporate, when someone is backed into a corner. Why did you miss your target? Why didn't you close that deal?
Yeah.
Then there's all these excuses as to why it's someone else's fault.
Yeah.
Well, the pricing was too slow, or the contract T's and C's didn't match what I needed, or the decision maker wasn't available, or I've heard all the excuses.
I used to run a business in IBM, and my sales leader once said, "It isn't my problem we can't make our targets. Offerings doesn't create anything for us to sell."
Exactly. So there's always, but there are some fair process issues that need reviewing, like that one. But in any organization, sales and product design always have challenges.
I think the interesting thing in this topic, and where Neil and I want to go with this, by the way, guys, is we want to end up in a place where we say, so what can you do about it? But there are some examples it's worth us putting on the table so you can think that through, because you've probably got some own examples from your own world, whether it's in your personal world or your business world. We've all been there, right? And we may have been there as the victim. We may have been there as the protagonist. And I think there's learning in both of those. But if you are the protagonist, you've got more control to not let this happen, right? And I also find, by the way, Neil, it's infectious. That Correct. If you start creating a different world, people will come with you on that world. If you create a world which is about blame, people will come with you on that world as well.
Well, so let's just explore that for a second, right? So let's look at the dark world of living in a blame culture.
Yep.
And it is important to look at that. So I did a little bit of research on this, and wherever you look, the research kind of points to the same thing. So what's the damage it does to the business? And this is why it's important as leaders to listen to this, right? It damages your business. So what kind of damage does it do? The attrition rate of employees goes up, because no one wants to live in a blame culture where whatever they do, they can't do it right, or their boss is going to blame them.
Yeah.
The second one was it reduces productivity. It reduces that commitment you get from people when they want to be there and they feel empowered. The third one was you get decision escalation, which means you as a boss are the only one who can make decisions, because no one wants to take the risk of making a decision below you in case they get blamed. And then the fourth one was it suppresses innovation and creativity because no one wants to take the risk of being wrong in innovating and creating or doing something that's outside of the process they've been told what to do. And that's the kind of damage. So, and it's a blame at the top, because culture starts at the top. Blame at the top drives blame downwards.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, I wrote down as you were talking, risk taking, and then you came in with that one straight away, right?
Yeah.
We know that taking risks has the best potential for great outcomes, but it also has the risk that it could go wrong. But I can't remember whoever said it, and there are people who question who actually said it, right? Somebody told me it was Nelson Mandela, but it might have been others. There is no failure. There is only success and learning. Now, I don't know who actually really said that, but the truth is, if you don't take risks, you won't do that. And you're not going to take risks if you're going to be blamed. You're going to sit back, take the safest course of action, which probably has the least best outcome, right? Because you're not pushing it to as far as you could push it. Personal view.
Yeah, why would you stick your head above the parapet if you know it's going to get shot off and you're going to get blamed if it goes right? And if it goes right, of course, your boss is going to take the credit for it.
Yeah.
So I think that, who wants to live in that place where you cannot grow if you don't expand, and to expand, you've got to make things go wrong. There's Hoffman, the guy who set up LinkedIn. I can't remember it'll come to me. But he put in his manager's objectives. Reid Hoffman. He put in his manager's objectives to fail 20% of the time. And they had to prove to him that they failed 20% of the time. And if they didn't, they had to explain what they were going to do next month to fail 20% of the time. Because he knew that he had to create a culture where it was okay to fail, otherwise they couldn't grow.
Imagine you're going out in the morning looking for an opportunity of failure to work on.
Yeah, now there's a difference between failing and cocking up, and damaging the business. It's failing because you're trying something new.
Take risks, push yourself.
Yeah, push the envelope, whatever the term is. Yeah,
fantastic.
I think the Matthew Syed's book Black Box Thinking is and a lot of people out there in leadership world will have read it. But he talks about two great examples in there of healthcare and the aviation industry. Mm-hmm. And he's talking about it in the feedback culture, but it fits with blame as well. So in the healthcare industry, in the US specifically, when things go wrong, everybody's trying to cover their backsides.
Yep.
Because they don't want to be sued, because there's a blame culture. If it goes wrong, someone must be to blame. In fact, you see adverts saying that, don't you?
Yeah.
Where there's blame, there's a claim.
Where there's a blame, there's a claim. Absolutely. Yeah. Spot
on. So when things go wrong, they don't look and go, right, what can I learn from this so that the next patient doesn't suffer from this? Everybody buttons down the hatches, hides what happened, and no one learns from it. And guess what? People die the next day of the same thing, but the same mistake.
Yeah.
Whereas in the aviation industry, when they sit down and review a near miss or an incident, they have a process of learning. Mm-hmm. Where they listen to everybody, the pilots, the engineers, everybody, ground crew, and they try and improve and learn from it, not blame anyone. And guess what? It's the safest form of transport.
There's a good connection there, isn't there, between not having a blame culture and continuous improvement. There's a good connection there, which I hadn't thought of, right? Yeah. And you said something in our preparation as well, Neil, was around fear, right? Yeah. This whole thing just carries fear within it. Fear of failure, I think, was one thing you said.
Yeah.
What was the other one that you mentioned?
So I was talking about fear of failure, and then there's incompetence as well.
Yeah, fear of failure or incompetence. Let me tell you, it was an interesting conversation we had, guys, because we said, as a leader, you're probably either fear of failure or fear of it. So it's incompetence.
Yeah, or incompetence. If you're a bully, if you're a bully as a leader, you're either scared or you're incompetent, and you're blaming other people for those two emotions that you've got.
So which label would you prefer to have, guys?
Yeah.
Think about that, right?
Yeah.
Or have none of them. Or have none of them, because you're not in this world, right?
Yeah.
And change your thinking into a world where if things don't work well, learn from it, adjust, move on, right? And you will continually improve, develop, and grow yourself, your team, your business.
Yeah.
Come on, who doesn't want to be there? Who doesn't want to be in that world? Come on.
Well, if they're enabled to be. So if you're middle management and your management is in this blame culture, you've almost got to be the person who's deflecting that and enabling your team to thrive below you, but you're having to deal with this blame culture and work out how you can manage that. And there are ways of managing it, because we learned how to manage it.
But you and I have talked about that on here before, Neil, right? There's two other words that came in here. One of them was about the courage to step up and take that and don't transfer to your team what you're getting placed upon you.
Yeah.
And the other one is acting as the buffer. You need to absorb that and don't let it get through. Now, that ain't easy, right? But no one said leadership was easy.
So there's an episode we should do on this, actually, on upward management. I think because I spend a lot of time when I'm coaching people on upward management, whether it's upward management to a level of directors or to investors or to owners of businesses or whatever it is.
Yeah,
it's probably a whole episode on how to do upward management.
Yeah.
So I think what we've done is we've said, look, there's a problem here. The blame culture environment damages your business, damages your employees, damages your productivity. It's not good for anyone.
Yep.
So then what do you do about it? And what would your advice be to someone if they wanted to try and change that in their business?
The first thing I would say is the topic of what the blame is the thing you're trying to fix. So think about the problem that you were trying to address. Don't think about who caused the problem. And that's got to be your point of focus. So the difference is between, is it an individual or is it a subject or a topic or an item? That would be the number one for me. What is it we're trying to fix? What is it we're trying to create? What is it we're trying to do? That should be your focus.
So focus on the solution.
Yeah.
And how you might address the solution rather than how you got to the place you're at.
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong in working out that something went wrong, so long as you're not trying to hold someone accountable for the fact it went wrong. I think we talked in the prep, you were talking about Formula One, right? And someone didn't. So look, the pit didn't turn this round as fast as they should have done. We're not looking to identify who the person was. We're trying to identify what it was. So as you said in the prep example, the gun didn't work on the wheel. Right. Okay. We're not trying to find out who was responsible for that gun, but why didn't that gun work? That's what's important.
Yeah.
Right?
So you've got to, so they talk about it when I read about this earlier, they talk about work on the system and the process.
Yeah.
Not looking to blame individuals in the process. And I think that's really important. So, okay, I've got that. So focus on the system, the process, and how you might make that better. What else would you suggest?
If you wanted to make this positive and not negative, realize there's an opportunity for learning, development, and growth. Actually turn it on its head and go, rather than us having a failure, we've got a learning opportunity.
Brilliant. Yeah.
And if you exercise that learning opportunity, do you not come off smarter and better than you were before?
So then it's how do you create that culture? So when something goes wrong, that you then, okay, team, great, fantastic, well done to Joe. We've now got a learning opportunity here, guys. What can we do? So I guess it's how do you go from let's blame Joe to how can we learn from the failure in the process he's uncovered?
Do you know, I'm not an expert in it, right? But in agile methodologies, one of the things they teach is for you to continually ask, what could I have done better? What could I have done better? But then for you also to look at the team and say, what could we have done better as a team? Right. And again, don't come back to, oh, in the team is actually Neil, Dave, and Albert. The one that screwed up was Dave. No, we're not looking at that. In the team, so I personally could have done this better. That would have given us a better outcome. But the team could have done this better. What can we do to make sure that happens next time?
And I think there's a couple of things to remember here. And there's a phrase that you used to use all the time, which I still use now, which was no one wakes up in the morning and comes to work to screw up.
Yeah.
You know, everyone comes to work with the intention of, I want to do the best I can today.
Yeah.
With the resources I've got, the skills I've got, the capability I've got, or whatever it might be, I want to do the best I can today, in general, anyway.
Yeah.
And I think if a leader has the point of view that says, if something doesn't go right, how can I create a culture of what can we learn from that? How can I accept the fact that this person might not have had the skills they needed, or they might not have had the knowledge of them. But actually, one of the things that you need to do, and we've talked about this a lot, is people have got to know what good looks like.
Absolutely.
They've got to know that this is your expectation, because typically we are disappointed when our expectations aren't met. And so if a boss, as a leader, if you're not helping people understand what good looks like, then guess what? You're going to be disappointed.
For those of you that don't know it, guys, that's one of Neil's favorite phrases, right? Because it absolutely brings you, it can stop meetings in their track when you ask what good look like and people stare each other around the room, right? It's a really, really important methodology to think about, guys. And it's such a simple question, but it's such a powerful one.
So there was a couple of examples that I looked at, and I've heard on in interviews, and I actually saw David Coulthard presenting on stage at an event I was at.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to look at, so the New Zealand rugby team, one of the things they do, and it was their captain at the time, but he was talking about it, they sit down after every match in the room, and they go in the changing room, and they each are given feedback by their peers on what they saw and what they thought they could have done better.
Mm-hmm.
It might be, well, you were out of position here. I really needed you ahead of me, or when I had to tackle this guy, you could have filled in behind me. So they give feedback, and one of the key things about that is there's no opportunity to say, actually, no, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. I did do that, but I didn't do that because I was thinking this.
Yeah.
So you can't defend what you're hearing. You're just receiving feedback, and that's an opportunity to learn and make you better.
Yeah.
I don't know. Have you ever run as a leader? Have you ever done that in a leadership capacity?
Yeah, probably more in a kind of root cause analysis. I mean, you and I worked on deals all the time, right? When we win the deal, there's nothing but celebration, right? When we lose the deal, what's the first thing that happens? Right?
Oh yeah, no. Why did you lose? But
why did we lose?
No one ever looks at the learning from that, or very rarely.
Yeah. So that was part of my world for many years. Was the blame culture that if you've lost a deal, someone's going to get shot.
Yeah.
No, that is a crazy place to have been, right? So,
and in fact, actually thinking about it, the best learning we ever had was when we lost a major bank in the UK.
Yeah.
And I remember my part in that was I went and found the salesman who'd sold the deal against us.
Yeah.
And I brought him into the company and paid him as a consultant for a day to sit down and run workshops on how he beat us, to learn what we could learn from him. And we learned a hell of a lot in that process.
Yes, we did.
So that was a good example. And I think the other example, so you mentioned Formula One, right? The other example is that in Formula One, at the end of a race, whether they've won, lost, finished the race, not finished the race, they each review, they sit down, and before they travel, before they go out and party, they each review each department again, and they get feedback from every other department on what could you have done better.
Yeah.
So you've got to foster that culture of feedback to enable growth.
Which is interesting what you just said there, Neil. It's departments, right? So as an entity, they're talking to a different entity. So no one's taking it that personally down to an individual. It's entities sharing with each other to say, how can we jointly? So in a company, it's businesses and functions saying, how can we move the company forward? Yeah. That's such a powerful thinking.
Yeah.
Can you imagine creating that?
So what we've kind of established is blame culture is very painful. It's a horrible place to work. It's not good for the business. It's not good for the individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And, there are lots of examples of where it doesn't work and it damages even people's lives.
Yeah.
And the way you fix that is some of the things that Albert and I have just been talking about is you focus on the process and the system, not on the individuals, and how can you make that better? How can you grow?
Yeah.
Openness and trust and communication and creating that feedback environment. And make sure people know what good looks like. So you're clear on that common goal, that common vision, and where each person fits in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a natural. Don't worry if you do feel like blaming someone. That's a natural human reaction.
Yeah.
The
only other thing I'd add in there, Neil, is everybody take responsibility for inputting to this. Don't sit on the sideline waiting for somebody else to comment. And if you do see a blame culture, it does take courage. I'm not sitting there with your job. I don't have your mortgage to pay, guys. And I know that it's a challenge that if you see that, if you jump in, it could cost you. But you need to gauge that. But by the way, you could be the one that changes everything happening in the room or in that scenario, because you could stop it. You could stop that rolling down the road and say, whoa, hang on, guys, we're focused in the wrong place here.
And I think the leadership of that, so for the leadership detectives, the clues in there are you've got to create the environment to enable that to happen.
Yes.
You've got to spot blame when it comes down to you, and you've got to spot blame when you're thinking it and feeling it. You've got to stop blame within your teams, and you've got to create that openness, feedback, engagement, etc.
Here's an invitation, guys. Drop into the comments where you think a blame culture is positive and why. Be glad to hear it, because I can't think of it, right? But we might be missing something, Neil, because you and I are optimists, right? But we're realists as well. So if we're missing something, guys, please tell us.
Yeah.
Just another comment I'd like to make while I'm here. We're on this topic because we had a recommendation from one of our listeners. So thank you, guys, for keeping that coming forward. James Loftus, by the way. So James, here's your credit. We've kept it till the end. So if you didn't watch the whole thing, you wouldn't have heard us say that, right? All credit to you, James, for putting that topic forward. Because when we first looked at it, we went, what do we think's here? And we suddenly realized it's such a great topic. And by the way, it exists in all of our lives. I dare someone to say it doesn't exist in their life.
Yeah, and it is a human emotion that we have to recognize we all have. It's just what we do with that emotion.
Yeah, and just a thank you to Neil here for doing the research, because I apologize, guys. I was a bit lazy and I didn't do any on this topic. So Neil, thanks for doing that.
Hopefully there's a learning experience in there as well. And we'll have a conversation about that later. No, it's fine. And look, it's great to talk about this because it is an important topic and we want to help the leaders out there. So hopefully this will help you. And thanks for listening. Great to see you again, mate. Please subscribe, guys. I keep putting my thumbs down when I say subscribe. I mean, give us a thumbs up and subscribe. And see you in the next episode.
Fantastic. Good to see you.